so you guys can hear. You all should be looking at, well, I'm going to go ahead and show the screen. Okay, great. Looks like here. I'm going to go ahead and show my screen. I wanted to just quickly go over a few items just so you know how to participate in today's event if you'd like. And I do recommend that you use the GoToMeeting phone conference bridge dial-in versus your computer speaker because that just gives people better results. I also wanted to let you know that you can submit questions at any time during the webinar by entering them into the chat section of your GoToMeeting window. I'm going to address the questions as time allows near the end of the session, and then regardless of whether I can get through every question or not, I'm going to be sending everybody the complete question and answer log, including any that I didn't have time to address during the session. Okay, so let's get started. This is a webinar where I'm going to actually be training you on some actions that will help you as a mortgage professional to get the most from your ACT database. Now, I realize that's a really broad statement, and for sure we will not be going over everything that we teach loan officers in our complete training series. However, you should get some good training today on some key areas in ACT that will help you organize your day-to-day business and increase your loan conversion rate at the end of the day. So some of you on the call I have known for a while, and I really appreciate everybody that's attending. And I have been working specifically with mortgage professionals for about close to 20 years now, and I get what you go through because that's all I do is work with you guys in your industry. And in your world of constant juggling of your prospects, your active pipeline, your closed clients and realtors, as well as always keeping up with compliance and guidelines, and the list goes on, a major key to your success these days is focus. So the training that I'm going to go over today consists of tips that are actively used by loan officers who tell me they definitely increased their production when they started using their ACT more proficiently. Now, proficiently means beyond ACT being like a glorified Rolodex and you just kind of have names, address, and phone numbers, and maybe you print, labels every once in a while to send out holiday cards. So that's what I mean by, even if you are at a pretty proficient level, there's always some new things that you can do to get more juice out of your ACT database. Okay, so today specifically we're going to talk about tips to actually build your database and keep it growing, and then a way to really increase your conversion rate. Okay, so, and I just put chat, it looks like somebody is trying to call them through the audio, but the code is invalid. Yeah, the code that was on the email should work. If that doesn't work, you can try to, use your computer. Okay, so, all right. So before we dive into the ACT system nuts and bolts, please bear with me for just a second. I would like us all to kind of step back from a moment of the computer, kind of forget the computer for a second, and think about the human systems that swirl around you as a mortgage professional. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. But it makes it a lot more exciting for loan officers to spend time developing and honing their skills with their ACT database if they remember how far-reaching their expertise and influence ends up being out there in their community. So if you're staying on top of your business with ACT help, you were really in a sweet position to have a lot more success over the entire lifetime of your career without spending your nights and weekends trying to keep up with everything, or kind of giving up on keeping up with everything and not being satisfied with your production numbers. Okay, so let me just all right, so okay, so this is an example of what I'm talking about with these human systems, and then we're going to go into ACT, and I'm going to show you how you can support your business better and deal with the human systems a little bit better. This last July 4th, I was at a neighbor's big barbecue bash and met a gentleman named Michael and his wife Sherry. Michael asked me what I did for a living, and I told him that I help mortgage companies and loan officers with their database. And he said, well, what does that mean? And I said, well, a lot of loan officers use a database tool to stay on top of their day-to-day business and stay in touch with their customers and business partners. And he said, well, that's kind of a bummer. I wish the mortgage guy that helped us when we bought our house 4 years ago would have stayed in touch with us and kept track of us, because I would have happily given him 2 new customers this year. A friend that I work with is trying to refinance his house, and then I have a nephew that's going to relocate here in January and needs help getting a loan going. The guy that helped us with our loan was awesome, but we only met him once. We did everything by phone and email, and when we signed the loan documents, we went to a title office. The problem is I can't remember his full name or what company he worked with. All I remember is that his name was Jim something. We have our loan papers somewhere in our garage, and somewhere in there, I'm not sure where to find it, and the computer that we kept everything on has since blown its hard drive. So this guy seemed genuinely bummed that he couldn't help his friend at work or his nephew connect with somebody he had already worked with. And then at that point, a guy that was standing next to us interrupted us and introduced himself as Randall Clark, and in fact he was a loan officer. So this Michael guy gave Randall his contact info, his nephew's contact info, and the contact info of his friend at work, and said, yes, please contact them and tell them I referred you. So the moral of the story is basically this Randall gentleman who was right there, he put the contacts into his phone, and then hopefully he's going to follow up. But the net of this situation is that definitely was the right time and place for Randall, who added 3 new customers to his business, and a loss of those same exact 3 customers for Jim something. So I would just want to ask you a quick question. Who do you think you are represented more by in this story? Do you feel like maybe you're more of a Jim something who does loans on a transactional basis? So you kind of deal with people and then they're gone? Or do you think that you are more like Randall, who is always ready, to get people into his database and then has a follow-up plan? So that's kind of food for thought, and that's sort of the premise for this webinar. Is there's a lot of things that you can do in ACT, but I'm going to really, for this webinar, focus on some things to help you when you're out there in the real world, in working with mobile devices and so forth, and getting contacts into your database and staying in touch with them. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to go over in ACT is 4 tips for building your database and keeping it growing. And I'm going to actually try to mute some of you because it sounds like there's kind of a lot of background noise. So I don't know if any of you are in sort of a noisy area, but let me try to mute people. So don't take it personal, sorry, but I'm not sure where the noise is coming from. So I'm going to mute some folks here. Okay. Okay, so the tips that we're going to specifically go over today is importing and adding contacts to ACT, and this applies whether you've had ACT for 25 years or if you just started with ACT, or maybe you've had ACT for 5 years but haven't started using it yet. So all of these tips are regardless of where you are in your business and where you are with your skills in using your ACT. The next thing we're going to talk about is in terms of building your database and continually building it, is I'm going to focus on how ACT can help support you in asking for referrals and tracking referrals. And then the third item is talking about social media and how the newer versions of ACT help you to really connect and grow your database by these connections through social media. And then, believe it or not, I am going to talk about hard files real quickly because those still exist out in the world. All right, so now what we are looking at is we're looking at the current version of ACT, which is version 18. And before I go into this next section, there's just a caveat I need to put out there, and that is that many loan officers have their own database tool that they take with them throughout the lifetime of their career. So that obviously is, for your business, that's a really good strategy because you may change companies over the lifetime of your career. So it is really good to have your own ACT database that goes with you and travels with you throughout your entire business life cycle. But I just want to mention, Q2 would never suggest that you keep sensitive data like Social Security numbers or do anything to usurp your particular agreement with your employer about having your own database. So with that being said, let's go for it. So like I said, this is the current version of ACT, version 18. We offer ACT either, you can have the Windows version or ACT in the cloud. So here's ACT in the cloud. So you log in through the web and be able to get to your database over the web. For our hosting customers, we also provide ACT to you through apps. So we do have a specific iPhone and iPad app for ACT that's available at no additional charge for our hosting customers. But regardless of what device you use, if we do the hosting for you, you can get to ACT over virtually any mobile device, as well as just through the web. Okay, so ACT is available in all different manners, Windows, web, and on your mobile devices. And just real quick, in terms of our hosting service, we do some things that are very specific for mortgage professionals that other hosting companies don't. So if you have questions about that, I'm happy to fill you in. But we take special care of you because we understand the unique nature of the security around the information that you're working with and other needs that you might have, like auto sync from your LOS. All right. So let's start with the first tip. The first tip has to do with getting contacts in your database. So the very basic way to get a contact in is just to click on the New button in your database. It's usually on the top toolbar. That will open up a blank record and you fill it in. Okay. You can, and if you have, if we do the ACT hosting for you, then obviously you can also do that on your phone. You can add new contacts, like when you're at a barbecue, to your phone. The next way to get data into ACT is through interface with Outlook or Google. Okay, and so we're going to talk about this for just a second because I had some attendees already ask, how much I was going to go over this in this session, and this is just really important because the interface that's available between ACT and Outlook and Google or Google is very powerful and can do some really powerful things for you. So the way the interface works with Outlook is, so here's my Outlook, and the nice thing is, and this interface, by the way, is available whether you use the Windows version of ACT or the web version of ACT. But one thing that it does for you is when you send an email from your Outlook, if the email address is located on any of your ACT records, if you have a contact, when the email is sent, it will attach to the history tab of that contact record automatically. So what that gives you is in the ACT, on the ACT record in the history tab, you will have a central place where the data for sending emails back and forth will be. If you send marketing out of ACT, that also goes into the history tab. When you have conversations with somebody, you can also record that in the history tab. And by record, I mean you click on a button and type, what you discussed in the call. But the interface between ACT and Outlook for the email storage is actually tremendous. It's one of the most popular things. Because if you think about it, if you have your ACT database and you're carrying it with you through the lifetime of your career and you've been a loan officer for 7 years, that means you have that information at your fingertips. So let's say you don't talk to Tom Barnes for maybe a year and a half, and you get a voicemail from him and he says, hey, give me a call. You can go immediately to the history tab and see all of your communications back and forth with Tom and get right back on deck with where you left off. Okay, so that's one aspect of the interface. In terms of how it helps you to grow your database or import data, is the other really cool feature of the interface is that if you get an email from someone that is not in your ACT database, all you have to do is click on the email and click on add-ins. This is the interface, and then just click on create ACT contact, and the interface will pull the information off of the email and create a new ACT record for you. Okay, so this was the from, and then here's the email address, and then you fill in the rest, and just hit OK, and then they'll go into your ACT database. So again, that interface is really powerful for many reasons, but it saves you a lot of time in terms of building your database because, you know, none of us like manual data entry or duplicate data entry. Okay. So one other thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, more and more these days, loan officers are in companies where security has gotten, you know, like Fort Knox, and as it should, right? But I know that sometimes that's very challenging, or you might be at a company that has like a Citrix environment. So your question might be, well, if you're in a Citrix environment, or if you work at a company that you know they will not let us set up the interface, because this does require a download to your local computer to interface with your Outlook. The nice thing is there is an alternate solution that will allow you to have that interface between ACT and Outlook, and it's called 123 Sync. So I'll just pull up that page real quick here. And what that allows us to do for our hosting customers, we basically can set up the sync or the interface between your ACT and Outlook on the hosting server. There is no need to have to install anything on your local machine. So for people that are in a Citrix environment, or, you know, again, you're in a situation where your computer's completely locked down, but you want to have that advantage of centralizing all that information in your ACT through the interface, you still would be able to have that, okay? So it is an add-on. It's for a single user, it's $95 a year, but anyway, for those of you that, again, have sort of a lockdown situation, that might be a good alternative for you. Okay, so that is and then the same thing with Google, by the way. You are able to, if you use Gmail, there is an interface available with Gmail, so you can synchronize your contacts and emails, etc., with your Gmail account. So again, I'm talking about efficiencies here and growing your database. The other really common way, and again, I'll do my best to get to the questions near the end of the session, but the other really common way to want to get information into your database is importing an Excel file. So a lot of loan officers, let's say they just start with ACT, you know, the first thing I ask them is, you know, do you have data that we can import? Do you have data that we could import, you know, so we get your database started? So a lot of times they might have an Excel file. So here's an example of one. You have maybe some information about their loan, at least email addresses, hopefully, and name and phone number. Okay. So the nice thing is that with the current versions of ACT, it's really simple to import data from Excel. You also can import from CSV files, but the way that you do that in ACT is you click on File, Import, and then there's this little wizard that helps you along the way. You would just hit Next, and we'd indicate that we want to import an Excel file, and then you just browse to find that file. And we're going to indicate that we're bringing these in as contact records. Now, the nice thing is that you're able to set up your map because, again, and I have loan officers that they have maybe like 3 different Excels from 3 different companies that they worked at. So no problem, because you can actually build a map for each one of those to get your data in correctly. The typical import means it's really just going to import, like, you know, name, address, and email. It's not going to look for any other special fields. But you can use the custom import to actually build that map that I was just talking about. So with the custom import, on the left would be all the fields from your Excel, and then over on the right, you can specifically match those fields to fields in ACT. And basically the way you do that is you click on the right side, and that brings up the pull down that has every single field in your ACT database. So you could, you know, map that exactly. And certainly for our customers, you know, that go onto hosting, we actually provide the data import for you at no charge, so you don't even have to mess with it. But but in case you want to do your own, or in the case of, you have your LOS system, so maybe, once a month you export all your new closed loans out of Encompass, and you can import those into ACT, right? Okay, so then all you do for the import is you just click next, you want to import it, and then it'll finish doing the import. So I think, oh, just real quick on that email interface that we just went over with Outlook. When the email attaches to your ACT History tab, it can attach also any of the attachments that you got in the email. So let's say a customer sends you like their VOE, and then you reply and say thanks. That's going to go into your ACT History tab, and it will include, it will keep the attachments as well in the log. And in terms of that other service that will allow you to have the interface between ACT and Outlook, that it doesn't require any download on your machine, it's called 123 Sync. Okay, so those couple of questions that popped up. Okay, so for the import, that's done. Now the other thing is, so let's say you do an import from Excel and then you want to pull up those records. So the nice thing in ACT is you can do a lookup on any field in the database very easily. So what I would do is, if I did that data import and then said, well, now I want to actually see the records that I just imported, you can, in ACT, click on Lookup at the top toolbar and then select Other Fields. And then there's a pull down on the left where you actually can select any field in your ACT database to look up. In this case, I want to look up by create date because I want to find those files that I just imported. And then in the middle, you can, change your decision here equal to, in the last 3 days, whatever it is that you're looking for. But here I want to say, I want to find the records that I've added today. So create date equal to today. And then you hit OK, and that's going to go find those 3 records that I just imported. Okay? Because then the idea would be you would go to those records and finish your onboarding of the contact. And what I mean by that is you'd want to use the ID status, which is a way to mark your record and say, what kind of record is this? Is it a realtor? Is it a prospect? And that's also where you fill in, referral source. Maybe you got that, that person came to you from one of your realtor partners. You basically finish up your records. So you want to import them and then also get some key information updated. Okay, so again, the Excel import is very straightforward. Now, I mentioned that some loan officers, maybe once a month after the month ends, they might do a new export from their LOS to import all their new closed information into ACT. The other way to get that information into ACT is we do provide auto-sync services from your loan origination software. So if anybody's interested, just let me know and I can send you some information on that. But that is definitely another way to get information into your database and to keep it, fresh and viable, right? Last but not least, there is a way to also import contacts from your website or site. So some loan officers have, a website or maybe 1 or 2. And what you can do in ACT is if you go to Group, you actually can create a group from that particular website. So, here there's a group here that says lead import from that website. And then in ACT, you would go to this function called lead capture. It's a tab way over here on the right. And you would select create web form. And then they have a basic or extended. So extended means these are the fields that it would prompt for on the website. And then you hit OK, and basically what that does is it gives you the code for the form, and then you'd give that to your web guy or gal that manages your website. They would put that code up into the website, and then what you would do is just click on Get Leads, and that would import the leads from those websites. Now, this part's not automatic, so the loan officers that use that, they basically have, as part of their morning protocol, is to just click this and get any new leads, or sometimes they do it in the afternoon. But that at least is a way to not, again, do any duplicate data entry, which I try to do my best to help everybody avoid. So again, to recap, the ways to get your data into ACT is by, just manual, clicking on the new button. Your connection or your interface with Outlook or Google by, clicking and saying add this new record, or synchronizing the contacts. And then also Excel, being able to import from Excel, and then auto sync from your LOS, and then web import. Now the LOS sync, I just want to mention real quick, the solution that we use it's called the Universal Data Translator, and as the name kind of implies, it's very universal. So I know, we all know the common LOSs out there, I think, Encompass, Point, there's more and more of them. So we actually have never run into an LOS system that we couldn't set up with the auto sync. So I think there were some questions about a particular kind of LOS, and so our product, we can technically sync from any type of LOS. Well, I shouldn't call it the barrier, but the opportunity that arises is usually has to do with the IT department, right? So if that's something that, IT or you get approval on it, basically there's not any LOS that we can't set up the sync from, okay? So those are the tips for, again, importing, getting new information into ACT. So let's talk about the second item here that I wanted to go over that helps you to grow your database, right? There's a lot of things that you guys are, told you should be doing to improve your business. And one of the real common ones is, asking for referrals. Now, I found this really interesting, and these are some data points that you might have heard many times, but I just find them really fascinating. So, Texas Tech found that, 83% of people are willing to refer somebody or refer their friends to somebody that they worked with, but only 29% actually do, and I think that's like proactively. They proactively will refer them. So on the flip side of that, Dale Carnegie had done a lot of research and said, 91% of customers said they'd give referrals when prompted to do so. However, only 11% of salespeople ask for them. So I think, in a general sense, in most businesses, we're all kind of guilty probably of not asking for referrals enough. And I know for loan officers, that just becomes, if you talk about the perfect loan process, including prospect and post-close, there's probably like, might be like 3,000 touch points that you could do, with somebody. So you have to kind of pick the ones that have the most meaning, I think. And I think, asking for referrals can end up being some lower hanging fruit for you. For one thing, I think we all realize that if you get business based on a referral that came to you, your sales cycle is usually a lot shorter because there's the trust connection is a lot faster when it came from, so Susan Smith closed a loan with you, so she referred her golfing partner to you, and obviously that's a really strong referral because you did business with Susie, and then she's referring her golfing partner. So right away, you already have kind of some inherent trust, which is really important, especially in the mortgage industry when you're talking to people about their very private financials and so forth. So I'll get off my soapbox about that, but I just wanted to remind you how powerful it is to actually, work through referrals, and not just the ones that come to you from mostly your realtor partners. So then the question is, so how can ACT help support your focus on asking for referrals in a more consistent manner? So here's 3 ways actually you can do that in ACT, and they all have to do with activity series, okay? So activity series is, and some of you may already be using activity series, but activity series is a really nice, I'd call it kind of a level 1 way of setting up a series of reminders that you attach to a contact with one click, but then that series of reminders, it lays into your calendar so that that person or those related tasks that have to do with that person don't get, they don't fall off your radar. At least they're on your calendar, and you can have a better consistency in actually following through. So the reason I said 3 is that you have 3 opportunities to really use the ACT activity series in a really powerful way. One is with prospects. So I'll show you an example of what I mean by that. But typically with prospects, I saw this other interesting data point is that most salespeople only contact a new prospect twice. Okay. Now you may have an automated marketing system that you use either with ACT or maybe a different outside system that's not ACT. That maybe your company automatically sends out newsletters for you every month, or maybe you signed up for one of these other many marketing services. But the key is that, which is fine, okay, but the key is that that doesn't take care of any high touch, you actually picking up the phone and calling people at certain intervals. And also it doesn't take care of the fact that, as you move through your career, if you change companies, it's kind of like you have these newsletters going out and staying in touch with your prospects. Okay, that's great. But if you ever change companies, not only is your former company probably going to keep, obviously, marketing to your folks, but then your marketing takes the dip until in your new company, if they have marketing for you, or you start something else up. So activity series is something that's completely in your control, and it's something that you can be doing in your ACT regardless of what else is going in your market, going on in your marketing world. So you've got prospect activity series that can be helpful. You have in process, and then you have post close. Okay, so let's talk about how that relates to building up your database by asking for referrals. So the way you find activity series is you would click on schedule, and then here we can go to manage activity series templates. Now this database that we're looking at we call it iLoan. It's a custom database for mortgage that we've developed. So it's got a lot of mortgage related fields in it, and we also have it comes with a library of templates and activity series templates. The nice thing is you can create your own or change any of the ones that come with your ACT. So here I'm going to click on Edit a Template. And some examples here of the in process is there's these activity series that were set up based on a contract timeline. So let's say you have a 35-day contract, and I'll show you what we've pre-built in here. And then again, you can change this and put whatever you want in it. But loan officers find this helpful in keeping track of all the many tasks, again, the quote-unquote perfect loan process that you have to deal with every time you have a loan in transaction. So this one, basically, these activity series for in process are based on the estimated close date, and then they work backwards from that. So that's why you see minus 34, minus 33. So if this is a 35-day contract, it goes all the way up to 4 days before the estimated close date. This is the task that you need to remember to do. So and then 7 days before, 10 days before. So again, a whole set of these comes with ACT iLoan that we've developed, but you can change them, you can add that to them, you can create your own. Now in terms of asking for referrals, a really good opportunity to do that is in your in process is, right when the loan gets approved because everybody's happy, and then also right after close is a good time to ask for a referral. But there's also a lot of opportunities once they've closed that you could be asking for referrals. So in this activity series for closed loan, what we did was we built in some reminders for, again, asking for those referrals. So, on day 0, that means the day of the closing, day 0. When you call them, you would, ask for a referral. And then maybe when you call in 30 days or contact them to make sure they got their first payment letter, there's a reminder here to ask for a referral. If you check in with them at 90 days, if you're doing the annual reviews. So the activity series, you can actually build in these things like remembering to ask for referrals, and that will help you, obviously get new referrals in your database, and then they're included in all of your follow-up and your marketing. And then the hope is, of course, that you do loan business with them someday. But the activity series, some of the top producer, act pros that we have the pleasure of working with, they really, like these activity series because, again, regardless of what other marketing or anything they have going on, this is something fully in their control, and it helps them stay on top of prospects and, tasks while you're in contract, and then plus, following up with people once they close, okay? And then the way it actually works is it's real simple. So let's say we find somebody that just closed, okay? So let's say this is somebody that just closed. By the way, for those of you that if we don't have the automated sync from your LOS for whatever reason, what loan officers will do is, as part of the closed loan checklist, they just have a line item to go update the act record with, update the ID status to close, and then go in at least to the loan info tab and enter in, the program, the rate, the lien amount, financing type, I would say the 7 or 8 really critical fields that they'd want to have stored in their database, again, for the life of their career. So, so let's say that Spence Lloyd just closed. What you could do with that activity series is you just click on Schedule, Activity Series, and then we just go and find our closed activity series. And let's say we know, it's scheduled for close tomorrow. We could actually schedule it there. And then what the activity series does for you is it lays into your calendar all of those reminders, okay, at those specific intervals that we have in the activity series. The other thing I always like to include at the end of the activity series too is kind of a little attention, little ding to yourself to tell you, hey, this reminder is the last reminder for Spence, either reassign post-close or assign another activity series to stay in touch. So again, you might have your company doing, these follow-ups for you. Just so you know, we also can automate any of these kind of, prospect, in-process, post-close, birthdays, annual review reminders. So we do offer a service that does a full turnkey automation. But again, if that's not something, you want to do right now, this activity series is a really powerful way for you to have your own easy-to-use protocol to keep track of things and to grow your business by having those reminders to ask for referrals. Okay, so that's the activity series. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the social media aspect, and how does that help you grow your business? Well, just a couple things there. In ACT, there is now something called the Web Info tab, and what that allows you to do is add an ACT record, and then right from the ACT record, you go to the Web Info tab, and there's a whole series of social media type sites here. So you have Facebook, LinkedIn. You can also add other sites like ActiveRain. But what it does for you is it makes a connection between that record that you're on and that social media site. So here, this brought up, sorry, let me go back to LinkedIn. This brought up this woman here, Zion Krause. Now, obviously, that's a pretty unique name, just like my name, and so there's only one in here, so you can probably bet that she's the right one. So you could actually connect to them from here. But here's how this is used in real life for loan officers, okay? You get one of your realtor partners sends you an email and says, hey, can you contact this lady, Zion Krause? She just moved to the area. I'm showing her houses, and that's all you really know about her is her name, and maybe he gave you her email address. Well, right when you put the person into ACT, you can go here and, check them out on LinkedIn, and once you connect with them, you can go here and ask them to be a friend on Facebook. Now, launch those separately, sure, but I like to always tell you about things that save you time, and instead of you launching it LinkedIn separately, typing in her name, you just go here, and then you hit connect. Okay, so that is a big time saver in building up your database and making it more powerful for you. The other thing, let's see. Okay, the last part of this is talking about the hard files. I'm just going to talk about them really, really quick. But I do run into loan officers that a lot of times they have hard files, you know, and they might have stacks and stacks of them, maybe from previous companies, and they are completely reluctant to deal with them in terms of getting them into their ACT database. And what I would say is if you are in that situation, don't let that stop you from actually getting into ACT. I don't suggest that you personally sit there and enter the information into ACT because that's not the highest and best use of your time. However, even, you know, if you hired like a college kid or your own kid or a friend's kid and had them do that for you, you know, let's say you pay them for a couple days of work, and even if you only get, you know, 1 or 2 loans from them, putting that into your ACT database and you following up with them, that's well worth the 2 days, plus the fact that don't forget our story about, you know, Jim something, right? Because every time you add a new contact to your database and you have a plan for staying in touch and really managing them in your own database, the less chance you have of, you know, them being at a barbecue and, you know, somebody else says, well, I can help you because they haven't heard from you. The other thing is with the social media is, well, really in general with ACT and adding your records and including the social media, is you should have a new contact onboarding, okay? And this really is, my description of this is whenever you get a new contact, there's really like 3 or 4 things now you should do in today's world to make sure that they can find you and you're staying in touch with them, at least you have them in your database. So your onboarding plan might be, you know, add your new prospect to your ACT database, assign an activity series, right? So it's a new prospect, so they don't fall off your radar. Add them to your LinkedIn, add them to your Facebook, and then follow them on Twitter, because then maybe they'll follow you. So this is something that, like in our office, we do every time we get a new contact record. We're doing these functions, and even if you don't have your own social media presence, like you're posting blogs and all these things that everybody tells us that we need to do, it's really important to have these as part of your onboarding, because let's go back to our story, you know, of Jim something. If he had been connected to that couple, you know, on LinkedIn and or even Facebook, they might have just like searched there for Jim, and they probably would have recognized his name, and then, you know, referred him to their nephew and their friend at work. So it is super important to make all those check marks whenever you add a new contact record. It's just going to make your database so much more powerful for you and so much juicier, for lack of a better word, because you have, it reduces the friction, okay? So it reduces the friction of people trying to find you. And again, as you're changing through companies, you might have marketing happening, but if you change, that marketing stops, and then, you know, there's like this gap where they're not hearing from you. So it's really important to have your own thing going. Okay, the other thing, oh, and along those lines, I just want to mention too, we have, in terms of keeping your own marketing going, we have a partnership with Loan Officer Magazine where they provide to us the new content for realtor-facing articles and client-facing articles every month that they publish, and then we will send them out to you, to your, your clients and your realtors for you automatically from your app. So this is for, you know, for customers that we're hosting, but again, we're reducing friction. You have your own app database, you know, you have your own protocols for when you add people, maybe you use activity series, but then if you also have us do Pro Assist for you, again, it doesn't matter what company you're at or if you change, you know, through the 20 years you're a loan officer, you have this consistent plan for really managing your database, okay? So let's see, okay, we talked about the hard files. All right, so we're getting into the last part here, and this last tip that I'm going to give you is really the most powerful, okay, if you are using your ACT database for almost nothing else, you really want to get the interface with your email because you've got that historical tracking at your fingertips that's available to you. So again, you can, you know, see emails. You can add people to your database really super simple by clicking a button. So that interface is really powerful. So if you do nothing else but have that interface going, making sure you're adding people to your database, and this last tip, you will get more business from how you use ACT, okay? Because this next tip is exactly how loan officers tell me all the time, they will not let anyone touch their ACT. They will not, in fact, when they go to a new company, that's part of their negotiation. It's like they have their own ACT database, and they will not let anybody touch it because they kept their database with them through their career. And then they do this next function very frequently because it gets them new business very frequently, okay? So what this is in talking about, increasing your conversion rates, it's data mining, right? And there's some really key differences between, when I talk about data mining, I'm saying, you want to, let's say a new guideline comes out on a program, and you're like, oh my gosh, this would be perfect for people with this certain, with these certain conditions that we couldn't do a refi for before, but now we can. So what you can do in ACT is it's really easy to do data mining and find people that meet a certain criteria. But the difference between doing that in ACT and virtually most any other CRM or LOS out there is that with ACT, you can take that full circle. And what I mean by that is you can find the people with certain criteria in your database very quickly, and then you're able to create a quick email template, communicate to those people through the email template, and then right in ACT, you can see the quick report, and then from the quick report, you can select certain people and schedule a follow-up call for yourself on your calendar, okay? So that's what I mean by taking it full circle. You find them, you communicate to them, and then you follow up with the ones that looked like they were really interested in what you're sending to them. So that's what I'm going to show you here. So again, in ACT, very easy to look up records with, people, I should say, with certain kinds of criteria. So let's say we wanted to find all of our closed clients with a rate over 5 1/4. Okay, so we'll keep it really simple. You can go to any record in your ACT database, doesn't matter which one. And here, if you're using, the iLoan, we would go to the Loan Info tab. You'd right-click on the rate field because that's what we're trying to look up. You would select Lookup Rate. And then here, we're going to say greater than 5 1/4. Okay? So we hit OK, and ACT is going to go search through our database. We've got 22 people with a rate over 5 1/4. But we only want to communicate to the ones that have a closed date. Okay? So now I can go, so there's a couple things I can do. I can sort right from here. You just click on the column heading and you can sort. By the way, this is also, a lot of loan officers love this because you can click on this Excel icon and export the list to Excel. So you could sort them if it's a short list and just tag them. There's tag mode, and then just look up the selected. Okay. But let's say it's a really big list. Let's say there's like 220 people on here. What you can do to fine tune that and only see your closed loans is you would go back to Detail View, and then now we would go to Loan Status because we're looking for that close date. And now we're going to look up only the records that have a close date. The close date contains data. Very important here, at this stage, you would want to make sure you click this pull down and select Narrow Lookup. The reason is that ACT found 22 records that had a rate over 5 1/4. So now we need to narrow that to tell ACT, well, now within that group of 22, we only want the ones with a close date. So if I do that, now I get to 6. So I have 6 contacts with a rate over 5 1/4 that do have a close date. So now, going back to my whole full circle thing, and loan officers, raving about this all the time, the next thing is that you can communicate with these people very easily. So in ACT, you can email template very quickly. So there's a template library that comes with your ACT, and then you can create your own templates as well. And then there's a wizard that allows you to do a mail merge, and you send a mail merge out to all these contacts. Okay, so that's want to call it the old-fashioned way, but that's that way, that's still available in ACT, but the way that is now is significantly more powerful is being able to do that, but then also to be able to get those quick reports right back in ACT, so you can see out of these 6 people who, jump right on top of your email. Because sometimes, some people will just respond and say, hey, that sounds great, when can we talk? Some people are interested, but they get interrupted, waylaid, and then, it kind of floats away, and and you sort of lose them. So the way to get the actual quick report back in ACT is you would use, it's called e-marketing, okay? And I'm going to actually show you samples here of what it actually looks like. With the e-marketing, you are able to create your own template, okay? So you can go and create your own template. So here, I have my template. So you could have a template for, hey, it might be a good time to refi, can we talk about that? So real easy to create these templates in here. The e-marketing also comes with a library of pre-built templates, okay, so for all kinds of situations. You can also import HTML in here and create a template, so it's a really easy to use template builder. So you can create a template, and then what you're able to do is, go back to contact record, what you're able to do is you can click on e-marketing and indicate that you want to send that particular template to that lookup. Okay, so you can click on send campaign to those 6 people, and then send the email, if you will. And then right here from within ACT, you can go back to that e-marketing section, and here is the quick report. So a lot of you might, basically this e-marketing piece is a direct competitor with like MailChimp, iContact, Constant Contact. But the cool thing is it's built right in your ACT. You're not having separate systems that you're constantly duplicating contacts in. Gosh forbid somebody changes their email address, right? You're trying to update like 5 systems. So the idea with ACT is that you're really centralizing a lot of those tasks. And then the great thing is that feedback comes right into ACT. You just click on e-marketing, you click the email that you sent out, and then from here you can click on, let's maybe the top 5 or 6 people that responded to your, that got the highest scores, and the score is based on how many times they opened the email or forwarded it. And then what's really nice is that you can right here just click schedule activity, and that will allow you to, it actually sets up a reminder on your calendar to call these 6 people. And it puts them on separate to-dos in your calendar. But I can say, well, I don't have time to call them today, but I'm going to call these guys tomorrow at, 1 p.m. And then this goes right on your calendar. Okay. So again, this is all about making these kind of things that you do pay off for you better. And a really common scenario that loan officers tell me all the time is they'll say, you know what, and this is why they don't let anyone take their ACT or touch their ACT, because over 7 years, 12 years, whatever it is, even 3 years or 1 year, they've been storing this information in their database, and they're able to do this data mining. So they'll say, they pulled up 44 people based on criteria for a refi, did an email merge, sent it out, and maybe 5 people responded, 3 set up app appointments, and 2 converted. But the loan officer's perspective is, it took them less than 10 minutes to get 2 new loans. And again, the difference is, your LOS, you could do these kind of lookups all day long, right? Find people that meet a certain criteria. But first of all, how long have you been working at that company? Does that include all the people from your past that you served? And also, most LOS don't have a good, clean way to then have an email template, send it to them, and then get the quick reports right in the same tool. So anyway, that's like one of the most popular functions in ACT that loan officers use to increase their conversion rate by being able to do that data mining through the entire communication cycle. Okay, so we are just about out of time. Let me see. I'm going to look at the questions here real quick. Let's see. Okay, let me go up here. I'm so happy. I love all these questions. Okay, let's see where I left off. Okay, so one question was, does the current version of ACT have a one-to-many where we have multiple loan information for one borrower contact record? The answer is no, and the reason for that is that when you're doing like that data mining, you know each record has the loan information for particular separate loans. So if you are my loan officer and I've done 3 refis with you over the last 4 years, you'd want to be able to, when you do those lookups, find all of my properties that fit the criteria that you're looking for. But yeah, ACT the database, the back-end database itself is not set up for one-to-many. It's individual files. And somebody asked about LOS sync from Reaver's vision. So again, I have to take a look at it, but we've never run into an LOS that we couldn't sync from, just because of the way that our tool works. It's very universal. Let's see. Okay, and some of these I'm going to get back to you specifically because they're specific to your setup. So let's see. Okay, yeah. So some of them are more specific to particular setups. So I'll get back to you folks individually. But anyway, that brings us really to right about at our hour mark. Was there any other questions about any of these functions? Okay, I don't see anything else coming through here. So we're right about at the hour mark. So out of respect for your time, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. But I just really want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar, Focus and Win with ACT iLoan. And if you'd like to know more about any of our database services or tools or anything that we offer specifically for loan officers, we'd be really delighted and happy to help you. Our phone number is 760-434-3431, and you see our email address and our website up there on the screen. So again, thank you all very much for joining us, and have an excellent rest of your day.